Hey, Justin Bautier, CEO of Calix CPA, here today. Once again with Kevin Jacoby, who has now joined Hareng Long PC, an attorney firm. Are you based in Portland, or where are you guys at?
I'm still in
Portland?
Portland. My office is now in downtown Portland.
Oh,
So
okay, great.
yeah,
And I
still serving the
regularly,
same clients.
uh-huh.
Still serving the same clients though.
Okay, right
Primarily
on.
cannabis industry.
Yeah, yeah. And I reach out to you, Kevin, whenever there's any kind of legislation happening in Oregon where it's going to impact the cannabis industry. We recently talked about the certificate of compliance, which has not turned out to be as bad as people thought, thanks to, in part to your efforts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Although I'm still hearing about some difficulties and where
Sure.
where the Department of Revenue is being cagey about issuing certificates of tax compliance. So
Well, so far I haven't had anybody say they've lost their. Nobody has told me that the OLCC refused to renew them. It seems like there's grace periods and grace periods and grace periods, but people definitely got motivated to get their tax returns done and whatnot
yeah.
because of that. So that's good. But now we've got this measure 119, essentially forcing. It seems to me that it's unionizing dispensaries. But I thought maybe instead of me talking about it, I could have you tell us a little bit about what it's about and what
Yeah.
maybe dispensaries need to do, and then there was like maybe a stay on it a little bit or something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There is some litigation that's pending, but let me back up. So ballot measure 119 is a measure that was adopted by the voters of Oregon in November's election, that requires cannabis cannabis licensees who have a retail processor or wholesaler license, so not
Okay.
producers.
Mhm.
It requires them to get a labor peace agreement with a qualified union in the state. Um, Essentially, the labor peace agreement would require the licensee to allow the unions to access to the premises for the purpose of organizing their workers, and seeking their input into joining a union, and would require the licensees to remain neutral in their communications with their employees about whether or not to join a union.
Right.
That's it in a nutshell. Um, and that is required the OLCC has implemented this through some rules that require that you, much like tax certificate of tax compliance, you also now have to provide an assigned LPA at renewal. And
And so
this is
there was so is that the document that like is it a what did you call the document?
it's a labor peace agreement.
A labor peace agreement. And that I to be honest, I just threw something up in Chat GPT and it seemed to write up a something that seemed to be informed. I didn't quite even understand it, but now what that is, and then do they need to go like get that signed by a labor union, or would
So
the union provide that for them?
it's the union provides it. The
Okay, the union
essentially, and
provides it.
there is only one union that will provide it.
Okay.
That's the UFCW, the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. Because all the other unions have essentially said this is UFCW's turf. I think also Teamsters
Okay.
enter into an LPA with
So you can have dispensaries, some with the Teamsters and some with the grocery labor union there. And so
right.
okay, so then you would just kind of have to comply to their terms. The employees would need to comply to, and the
And
dispenser would need to comply to their terms.
some of the I've heard some reports that some of the terms of these LPAs are can be quite outlandish. There are some union locals that have told licensees that ballot measure 119 overrides OLCC rules, and they're presenting licensees with LPAs that would allow them to come in to any part of the employee areas, which are typically limited access areas because
Mhm.
there's cannabis.
Oh,
That they have unfettered access to that, and then they don't have to sign in, which is required.
so that's incorrect. So they need to comply to OLCC rules, like the
So
union
yeah, and
ordinance.
OLCC has since issued guidance that says no, that you still have to comply with OLCC rules. Ballot Measure
Yeah.
119 doesn't override our rules. Um,
Hmm.
but so there are, I've heard reports that there are a lot of kind of wacky terms that are getting thrown around there. And these terms are mostly take it or leave it. And so a lot of licensees are like, well, I'm gonna leave it, and now they're coming up for renewal. OLCC has also put out some guidance that says essentially if you don't have an LPA, go ahead and submit your renewal application anyway, and your license will remain active. Although eventually they're within something like 80 something days, um, they will take action to give you a hearing to not renew the license.
Okay.
And at any point during in that process, you end up getting an LPA, or conversely, if the requirement is stayed as a result of court order, which I'll get to, then they'll dismiss the non-renewal proceeding.
Yes, and so then it doesn't, the letter doesn't necessarily mean your employees have to join a union. It's just that you can't stop them from soliciting.
You can't stop them from soliciting. So the concern. So let me get into the law.
Yeah, go for it.
So in a couple of weeks ago, actually just before the snows in Portland, a couple of licensees filed a lawsuit in federal court contending that ballot measure 119 is unconstitutional, primarily because it is preempted by federal law, by the Federal National Labor Relations Act. And they seem to have a pretty strong argument on the merits there, uh, because there are certain rights that both employees and employers have under the National Labor Relations Act, that the LPA, or that the ballot measure 119 would require the employers to relinquish, both on behalf of the employees and the employer, and they're both relinquishing
Oh, I
employee
see.
rights and employer rights. One of those rights in particular is the right of an employer to provide factual information to their employees about the consequences of joining a union.
Oh, interesting.
So the ballot measure 119 would prohibit them from providing that factual information that is beyond just remaining neutral as to whether.
So like if you join it, this is a fact. If you join a union, then I'm gonna have to let like three of you go. I don't know. Is that a fact? Is that what the fact is?
That I would not. So
That's not a good idea.
that's not a good idea to say anyway, because that implies a threat of
Yeah, it does imply that.
coercion.
Yeah. I'm joking a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, for example, a factual statement that would be allowed under the NLRB or the NLRA would be, as a result of joining this union, you will have to pay dues, and your net take home pay will go down by this much, $300 a week or something like that. I don't
That's a
know.
little stupid.
So that is something that under ballot measure 119, under a labor peace agreement, that a licensee would not be able to say, because it's not remaining neutral, because it's telling them that there's a negative consequence to joining a union.
Interesting.
So in essence, so that's one of their arguments. And also in that same vein, is they're bringing a challenge under the First Amendment because it prohibits factual protected speech under federal law.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So however, there was a hearing in that case yesterday on the plaintiff's application for a temporary restraining order to stay ballot measure 119, and essentially what I understand, I just spoke with the plaintiff's lead counsel earlier today to get the full scoop on that. It sounds like the judge, and this is in federal court, so the federal judge seems inclined to agree with the plaintiff's position as to the merits of whether ballot measure 119 is legal and enforceable.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is because OLCC has essentially guaranteed folks that they're not going to immediately lose their licenses if they don't have an LPA, that there's not enough immediacy to the harm now.
Okay.
But for at least one of the plaintiffs in the case, there will be more immediacy to the harm by the summer, by June.
What do you mean by immediacy to the harm? What does that mean?
So they're essentially that they're not going to lose their license tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
That's or they're not in a position where they're going down the path of imminently losing.
Well, that's where we were with the certificate of compliance, right? Kind of like there was not a lot we could do until it became urgent for somebody to,
correct.
Somebody's going to be losing their license, then
correct. Until somebody is facing, you're good. If you don't do this, then you're going to lose your license tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Courts are not going to step in without on an immediate basis. What the judge did in this ballot measure 119 challenge was basically said, okay, it sounds like you've got at least 88 days, because that's what the state said. You got 88 days. I would like to have that. I think that gives us a chance to more fully brief the issues, so I can be fully informed. So the court has a briefing schedule, and then there's going to be another hearing on April 29th. Okay. And the judge promised that within 30 days of that hearing, he will have a decision out as to whether to put ballot measure 119 on hold.
Okay, great.
So we'll have an answer to that by on or before June 1st.
Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of process would have to take place for the organizers or the creators of ballot measure 119 to, improve the language so that it isn't unconstitutional? Like, do you see that happening?
So, ballot measure 119 is a statutory ballot measure, which means so it's not an amendment to the Constitution. It has been enrolled into statute. So statutes can be amended by the legislature. So there is a possibility that the legislature could this session make some tweaks to it, although I don't think that there is. I haven't heard that there's any bill, any bill that's been proposed to make any amendments to measure 119. Part of the reason is before ballot measure 119 in the legislative session, I think the 2023 legislative session, CW proposed a similar measure through the legislature, and ironically, it went through the legislature's Office of Legislative Counsel, came back with an opinion that said UFCW's measure was likely illegal under federal law.
Oh, so interesting.
So it seems like UFCW doesn't want to go through the legislature because don't like that Legislative Counsel is correctly, in my opinion, reading federal law, and so they're they kind of want to. That's why they went to the ballot measure route, because they couldn't get it through the legislature, because the legislature doesn't passing a measure that's going to be enjoined by the courts. Yeah, they don't want to waste time. Right.
Okay, so like, should people just pause and to agreement, or what should people be doing?
I obviously, the decision of whether to enter into a labor peace agreement with a union is it's primarily a business decision for each licensee. And if those, if you're presented with terms and those terms are livable with you, go ahead and sign it. Like, that's fine. If you're supportive of unions anyway, and you don't mind organizing or exploring union membership, go right ahead. If you have reservations, if you have any, if you see the terms and you don't necessarily like them, or you have questions, don't sign it. Don't get to pressure from anybody else to sign it. And go ahead and submit your renewal without it, and wait at least until June before feeling compelled to sign something that you're not comfortable with. That's my general advice to including my clients.
Well, and it sounds like there's two unions that are kind of vying for it, so there is the opportunity to like maybe look at both options as well.
I don't know I only know that UFCW is. I don't know whether Teamsters is actively organizing in Oregon. I know that Teamsters has been organizing in other states, the cannabis industry.
Oh, interesting. Do you know what other states are organizing, or are there other states that have the same ballot measures or the same statutory regulations and whatnot?
California has a similar labor peace agreement requirement, although it's not as onerous as Oregon's, but it has the same. Many observers are like it's probably preempted under NLRA anyway. Nobody has challenged it yet for whatever reason, which is crazy to me.
Yeah,
because Californians are much more litigious than Oregonians. So
yeah.
But I think it's also a bit more of a closer call there because it doesn't have, and my understanding is it doesn't have this like mandated neutrality requirement.
Yeah.
So
interesting. And it just seems to me that like in order for unions to work, it's almost like everybody needs to be on board, right? Because like if you only have like five if you have a lot of dispensaries in one area and you only have a handful of people who are in the union, I mean, doesn't that like take the impact that that are unionizing, that the wind out of their sails essentially, because they can just easily be replaced, right?
Yes.
So it's like
the obviously there's within the industry about treating employees right. And that's always going to be a concern. This is an industry that has been struggling for a long time. And there's always a number of companies in this industry that are on the bubble where they're either gonna make it barely or they're gonna fail. And whenever there is a widespread issue of failure, there's gonna be employees that are left holding the bag. They don't get paid what they're owed. They're suck. That's not likely going to be, in my opinion, it's not likely going to be made better by widespread unionization. It's only going to be made better by some stability, economic stability in this industry, which this industry has not been able to go a single year without something changing. Last year it was the tax compliance. This year it's the LPAs. The year before that it was something else. The year before that it was something else. Every I think I mentioned this last time we talked. Every single year there is some outside force that changes the game for this industry. They've never been able to have 2 years in a row with the same status quo as far as regulations, as far as any
market stability.
The status quo. I mean, as far as market stability, it's been unstable for many years. That has been the status quo since at least 2021. So
it's very difficult, especially in Oregon. I find, I work with dispensaries all across the US, and it just seems like Oregon is always the ones with the most downward pressure. And it's made more difficult because the downward pressure on cannabis prices, and we're a supply state with not enough demand. And so then they open up dispensaries to do direct sales if they can, thus creating more channels for people, and then that just a continuation of downward prices. And so it's like kind of cutthroat out there now. And so Yeah, the people
Yeah,
that I talk to about like the unionizing efforts, like, I mean, it's really just gonna add to the pressure that they're experiencing. And then if their employees are feeling the effects of that as well, then it's not gonna help.
yeah.
There's no margin.
Yeah, the margins are razor
Yeah,
thin. This is
yeah,
not an industry where, where the CEOs are hoovering up all of the profits and leaving nothing.
right.
Nobody's
Yeah,
making
yeah.
profits.
Nobody's making money. Yeah.
No.
That seems to be the case. I mean, there are some in Oregon, especially in municipalities where they've limited the number of dispensaries, but
Mhm. Or
Portland, Eugene, Medford,
The dispensaries are making a killing off
off
cross-border sales with
Idaho.
Idahoans.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
other
but I
than
don't
that,
see anybody, but vast majority are barely hanging in there. So
mhm.
yeah, I think like the solution ultimately is just to be able to cross state lines and the supply have a place to go. Otherwise, it just creates this tremendous downward pressure, tremendous just supply. Like if cultivators, for example, would probably be less inclined to have dispensaries if they could sell their product across state lines.
Yes, absolutely.
Gosh, I wish there was some sort of solution for Oregon. I just
Well, the solution is full federal legalization, and that ain't happening anytime soon.
Yeah, or at
Um,
least the plan that I was rumored, but that got reversed immediately on like day one, right? So yeah,
yeah, it's
really
a
sorry
yeah,
situation right now.
it's a structural problem. The cannabis industry is the only industry that in the country that operates as that is supposed to operate as intrastate only.
Separate, siloed.
Yeah, all these separate siloed. Like this is in a country where we have interstate commerce. That just
Mhm.
doesn't happen, and it's only a result of federal policy.
Have you been following any of the law or anything like that around the interstate or violations of the interstate commerce clause and those kinds of things?
I haven't been following them closely, and I understand though that there are some lawsuits that are coming out of the tax.
Yeah, there's the tax side of it. I just was curious about like the equity side. Like I know that some was lawsuits that, and this is an Andrew DeWeese question probably because I think
Oh yeah,
he's been kind of focused on that.
you mean as far as like the prohibitions on out of state ownership?
Yeah, that one there definitely has been that going on.
Yeah, that's a very clear dormant commerce clause issue. Maine had their regulations
Yeah,
struck down under the dormant commerce clause. So yeah,
yeah,
there's a number of those cases, and again that they have a similar rule in Washington. That's actually Oregon had a prohibition on out of state ownership of cannabis licenses originally,
yeah,
but then the legislature got rid of it because LC the Lake Council told them it was probably unconstitutional, so they got rid of it.
yeah, yeah.
Washington still has it, and I think there have been a couple of challenges that have been unsuccessful, and I think they're working their way
Mhm.
through the appellate courts still.
Yeah. Well, I do know that like people are wanting to say, well, it's the being able to sell across state lines, at least in legal states, is unconstitutional, because if you have a violation of interstate commerce, I
Yeah.
guess. But at the same time, like our argument for reducing deductions due to 280E is the ongoing court case with Canada Provisions saying that what we're doing is intrastate commerce activity. We can't cross state lines, so therefore, uh,
So
imposing federal regulation on states that can't cross state lines is unconstitutional. So,
so
I,
280
I
doesn't apply because it's affecting interstate commerce.
right, yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea that and then it's all just a states' rights thing. Like
Mhm.
should the federal government dictate what is legal and not legal in the state if they have their own like regulation or whatnot?
Yeah,
And
that
it,
reminds
yeah.
me. Andrew DeWeese and I actually wrote an article. We co-wrote an article, I think, in 2016 or 2017 that examined
Mhm.
whether there might be time then to consider whether there is a fundamental right to consume cannabis under
Yeah.
under both the U.S. Supreme Court precedent and Ninth precedent.
Interesting.
So that I believe as I recall, we talked a lot about Gonzalez
Oh, okay.
in that case, which was the one that said it's a, yeah, of course.
Well, that's the one
Marijuana.
that's the one that's being like re-looked at, you know, and
Yeah,
that's the
essentially
argument that they're trying to
yeah,
run the Supreme Court. Yeah.
the argument is that, yeah, in light of all of both medical and recreational marijuana regulatory schemes in almost every state now, um, the rationale for Gonzalez versus Raich is no longer there. In my opinion, it hasn't been there since at least 2016.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
it's so,
Mhm.
and we're nearly a decade later from that. So
Yeah. Oh, I know.
it's but anyway, so we're
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
at ballot measure 119 now.
Yeah. And I mean, are you following the THCA and the Farm Bill or any of that? Like, as far as like any activity on closing the THCA loophole, which I'm conflicted on because I think a lot of what's being sold online as hemp across state lines is coming from Oregon. I'm fairly certain of that. And so that helps.
Well,
I mean, not legally. I'm
it
not saying it's
shouldn't
legal.
be.
I just happen to know that it might be happening.
It shouldn't be because Oregon law does
Yeah.
not recognize a difference between THC and Delta 9
No,
THC.
it's total
Um,
THC. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a total THC rule, and I know of several people that have been dealing in THCA that have been raided by law enforcement
Have they been?
because of that issue. So only do that if you're okay with being
Yeah, no, I'm
hiring criminal.
not condoning it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that I wonder how it would impact the Oregon market if the Farm Bill loophole was closed and it became a total THC for the whole country. Like if
Yeah.
because what's crazy is like for a while ago we had Homeland Security from North Carolina coming in and raiding hemp specifically and taking land and reaping all sorts of havoc. And even legal rec people, they were down, and it was weird. They're like profiteering. They're like taking people's land and then saying, okay, we're going to sell it back to you for 50 cents on the dollar. That's going to be your punishment, I guess you could say. Maybe that was their punishment. Uh,
Yeah.
but now the biggest THC headquarters is in North Carolina. Isn't that crazy?
Right.
It's
Yeah,
interesting.
that is crazy. Yeah, and I
I
know
mean,
about all
because
that.
they follow the Farm Bill, so hemp is legal there.
Yeah, I mean, so
THCA is legal.
THCA is legal, is THCA weed is considered hemp under the Farm Bill. Yes.
Yeah.
There is some ambiguity created by the USDA's rule, which has a total THC concept in it. But as far as legislation goes, it is pretty clear that THCA is hemp and is not a controlled substance under federal.
Right. Yeah.
So, and so as what, if they close that loophole, if you want to call it a loophole, I don't know if I would call it a loophole. I think it was very clearly intended.
You think so? You think
Yeah.
it was intended?
It was the people who drafted the 2018 Farm Bill knew the difference between Delta 9 THC and THCA. They did.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
and so yeah, is it a law or was it intended? I think it was intended.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a loophole for people to sell marijuana. That's what it seems like to me.
It certainly is. It is for people to be
Yeah.
across state lines because THCA hemp will get you high.
Yeah.
Whereas
Mhm.
hemp under a total THC standard will not.
Will not. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder if considering the fact that loophole to be it's opposed, the amendment to essentially close the loophole is being opposed by Republicans, which is really interesting to me. And especially the states that are follow the farm bills for hemp.
The hemp industry in those states are making a lot of money.
Yes, they are.
Selling THCA weed across state
Yeah.
lines. So those are, they're the money,
Well, let
which
me ask you this. Let me
are
ask you this. And this is, I mean, these questions are like kind of, they're personal. They're things that I'm interested in, but like considering that Oregon is, cutting the industry off at the knees when it comes to being able to move product state lines and participate in the hemp industry because of the total THC definition, which makes sense. I'm not, it doesn't make sense, but it it does. We are a supplier of product, and wouldn't it be nice if Oregon allowed the rec market and the hemp market to just participate in the hemp
it would
industry
be
across the United States? And then, so my question to you is like, if people wanted to make changes, because ultimately we're being killed and we're continuing to be killed as long as product cannot legally cross state lines. What would wanted to like amass and make changes? The things they need to do in order to
well.
try to change legislation to allow to maybe like
So
change the total THC hemp?
I know that there is a bill that has been proposed by the Cannabis Association, Cannabis Industry Association of
Okay.
AAO, that is before the Oregon legislature right now to allow cannabis licensees to essentially move product that is legally considered hemp outside of the recreational.
Oh, hey,
So
okay.
that is one that is I forget the I don't have the sorry, I didn't come prepared. I don't have
Yeah,
the bill
I'm
number.
blindsiding you by this question. So
Yeah, so but that's one so if that bill passes, that's a potential option. And I think it would be huge because it would be a way for Oregon to offer some of its excess
mhm.
product that is let's be real, most usable marijuana in the Oregon market is federally considered to be hemp.
Yeah, yeah,
But for Oregon's prohibition on exportation of marijuana under
yeah.
the THCA standard could be shipped out across state lines, and
Mhm.
these struggling farmers could make it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
our
and it would
overproduction,
be tested and
it would be superior to
it would
anything
be,
you can get
yeah,
on.
it would be great. It'd
Yeah,
be great. Yeah.
and that's the other thing is the THC is direct competition to our recreational system here because anybody can
Mhm.
go online and order
Yeah,
THCA hemp
yeah.
from North
Mhm.
Carolina, and it's not taxed. It's direct shipped, even though it's technically not legal under Oregon law
Yeah.
because it originated out of state, it's federally protected by the Interstate
Oh,
Commerce Clause.
whoa. So people in Oregon can buy hemp online and it's legal because
Absolutely.
it's like hemp over in a different country or it's protected federally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because the state
Hmm.
this cannot stop the state commerce of a legal product. Period.
Oh, yeah, indeed.
So this is it. So this is a this is one of the macroeconomic that Oregon has for itself. We are one of only two that has a total THCA definition of marijuana.
Wow.
Um, and for that reason, our industry is struggling, in my opinion.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, well, very good. Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been awesome to with you interview, and I
Yeah,
think the information is super valuable. Definitely send me if you have the information on that movement to
the legislation.
allow to participate in the hemp industry. That would be very interesting to me.
Yeah, I'll
Right.
find that and send it to you.
And then if people want to hold of you, just what do you got a website?
It's harangue.com.
Harang.com. Yeah.
HARRANG.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you.